One of the lessons that I've learned in this industry, this golf industry, is that good golfers like to play challenging courses. A life truly worth living is like a well-thought-out obstacle course, in which the finest parts, the most memorable parts, the best parts, the parts that someday you'll take pleasure in telling your children and grandchildren about, are often the toughest parts. The obstacles you overcome in your path on the route to victory. It was the late, great President John Kennedy who challenged America to go to the moon, not because it's easy, because it is hard. Think about what makes a great story. It's when the hero overcomes difficult obstacles, but in the end perseveres and triumphs. How would you like to read a book or watch a movie about somebody sitting around doing nothing? And that's why you all want to buy Carolyn 101. My first year as general manager of this broken down country club at the time, I was very careful to negotiate a gradual, multi-year transition to Trump National Golf Club. When I had made my first presentation to Donald, I told him unequivocally that operating the club as a high-end private club would no doubt cost him money in the short run. That would cost him a lot of money in the short run, but would make it a profit in the long run. And I am happy to say that after 10 years, the course has now been open for 2.5 years right now. And it is a profit center, and we have over 200 members. We have 16 residential units that have sold for about $2.8 million. So I think that's a success story. And now we're just opened up the Bedminster property in New Jersey. I'd like to talk about something that I've used in my management called target awareness, which I've used in my management and as I teach people as managers. Target awareness is the ability of an athlete to look at his target, internalize his target, and keep it in mind as he or she throws a football, swings a golf club, swings a tennis racket, or whatever have you. Keep your target firmly implanted in your mind instead of anxiously looking up to see where the ball is headed is a good operational definition of self-confidence. I don't think that a day goes by that I don't use it in some form or another. So what is my target? What is an entrepreneur's target? Even though I was a senior executive of somebody else's empire, my target was a profit and loss statement for the fiscal year that had showed us firmly in the black. That was my target, my bullseye, my goal. I had to internalize it and keep it in the forefront of my mind every time I took a swing. At this point in time, after 2 years of working for the club, we had pretty much broke even, except for the previous year, when my predecessor's faulty management had run the club over. How was I planning to reverse this terrible, terrible trend? I had to think a way an entrepreneur would. The first question that I asked myself when faced with any new situation is, where and who are my resources? A good way to start the process of figuring out your personal management style is to take any weakness that you have identified and pull out all the stops and turn it into a strength. For example, I couldn't help the fact that I was 25. I was a woman, I was blonde, I was young. But the basic point I'm trying to make here is that all of these were immutable factors. My youth, my gender, my personal relationship to the big boss could be considered, depending upon how they played out in real life, strengths or weaknesses. My major threats were, in other words, directly related to my major strengths. My greatest fear was that through my youth and/or inexperience, I would lack the authority, or even worse, fail to get the authority to instill fiscal discipline and raise employee morale in my division. A related factor was sexism. Because I was young and a woman, I faced the very real possibility that I would fail to gain the respect of my employees on a scale sufficient to turn the situation around within the specified period of time defined by my target awareness, which was 1 year. I always say you don't manage positions, you manage people. To which I might add, you manage perceptions. As I entered what I knew to be a preliminary probationary period, I knew that I would probably have to go at times extraordinary lengths to dispel any notion, no matter how misguided or off base, that Donald Trump had favored me in any way because I was young, perhaps cute, blonde, and female. I truly wasn't concerned that anyone would assume that relationship was improper. Nevertheless, I still had to work twice as hard and be twice as businesslike and competent to compensate for the possibility of even a smidgen of that misperception would end up being counted against me. My greatest management style became to figure out some way of turning these immutable factors into my strengths. In compiling my categories of strengths, I realized one of my most important strengths was that at the time these employees knew me. I had been told that under certain circumstances, familiarity can breed contempt. But I also knew familiarity under certain circumstances and handled property can breed respect. I couldn't do anything to change the fact that I had been working with some of these people for the same time, year in and year out, for close to 2 years. Yes, I could have fired all the long-timers on the spot and insisted on recruiting a team composed entirely of fresh blood, but I'm just not that sort of person. And besides, such an approach would have been inefficient and counterproductive. Fortunately, I had a number of very good people already in place. So I decided, instead of mounting some great recruiting drive, to do utmost to create a team using present personnel for the most part, which would function just like all of the winning teams I had been associated in the past. I decided instead on focusing on recruitment, to focus on context. I decided to focus on creating the condition under which I, as a leader, could do what all managers should do best: help their employees master the skills and gain the self-confidence to become managers themselves. I knew precisely what atmosphere I wanted to create because I'd helped create and generate and lived in it many times before. I also decided to maximize my resources. I made a point of joining the professional organization most relevant to my experience. During my frantic preparation to present Donald Trump with stats on the golf course, I had extensively consulted with the staffers at the Club Managers Association of America. The staffers there knew, as I well knew, just about everything there was to know about club operations. What they didn't know, they knew who to ask. The first executive decision I made was to apply for membership at the CMAA, and I can't tell you the number of occasions on which their support has been a critical contributor to the success in my job going forward. I wasn't in Donald Trump's office that day when our first fiscal year drew to a close, but I wish I had been. People who were there informed me that Donald Trump had proudly brandished our P&L printout for the first time, shouting how Carolyn had made a $600,000 profit. There have been many men before who have run this place, and they have all run it in the red. That was my resume. You would have thought he had just hit the jackpot at the Taj. It was a happy day. Donald, being a born entrepreneur, is a manager eminently capable of creating the perfect conditions under which his managers naturally blossom into full-blown entrepreneurs themselves.